Topo Athletic is committed to lifelong health and better movement. Topo builds running shoes for those who get out there every day, regardless of weather, speed, energy, or mood. Their distinctive fit and feel combines instinctive human movement with modern performance and lightweight comfort to help you keep going, keep trying, and keep moving. Discover the Topo difference and step into a run experience unlike any other. Hey, Run Tri Bike community. Welcome to the 128th episode of our Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Before we get started with today's show, I want to remind you that you can find this show along with others on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on the Run Tri Bike YouTube channel. Our shows include Running Tales with Craig Lewis, Beyond the Finish Line with Joe Harden, Food Fight Friday at the Aid Station with Adam Lee of Community Trail Running and myself, as well as What's in Your Earbuds with Om Gandhi and Joe Harden. And lastly, our Fiery Ember show, which is going to be resurrected, shall we say, on a weekly basis from here on out. We've already recorded a couple, so go check them out on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. This means we have something for everybody. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review so that we can keep these amazing guests coming on and providing you with inspiration and motivation from everyday athletes like yourself, as well as tips from experts in the fields of nutrition, sports psychology, and coaching. Today, we're going to be joined by Jena Brown. Jena is a registered dietitian and the founder, owner of Victorem Performance Nutrition. Jena has 15 years of experience and has helped hundreds of athletes with custom nutrition plans and non-restrictive nutritional counseling. So without further ado, let's get Jena on the show and let's get this party started. Hey, Jena, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm beyond excited to chat with you. For those of you who don't know, Jena has written a couple of articles. One of them is on our website today that you can go check out. And the other is in our digital magazine that just came out on the 15th of this month, which if you have not subscribed, you can go to our website right at the top, subscribe to our newsletter, and the digital magazine will be in your inbox with Jena's insightful tips about hydration. So, Jena, the easiest thing for me to ask you is, why should we care about nutrition and hydration as endurance sports athletes? But before we get there, our very first question to break the ice is, pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Absolutely not.
Yes!
I love pineapple and I love pizza, but I do not like pineapple on pizza.
You are welcome on this show every single week.
Awesome.
You are in Texas, correct?
Yes.
So what about barbecue? What's your stance on barbecue? What is an absolute no-no for you when it comes to barbecue, if you even like barbecue?
So I used to love barbecue, but it was one of my food aversions when I was pregnant with, I think, my third child. I have not had barbecue, or I prefer not to eat barbecue since. But yeah, brisket used to be my favorite.
All right, we'll get into more silly food questions towards the end. But in all honesty, right? So we're all, those of the people that are listening and those of us that are owners in this company are endurance sports athletes, which means we swim, we ride, and we run for hours on end. Like, why is it important for us to pay attention to our nutrition? Why can't I just grab a handful of chips every now and again before I go out for a run? Or why do I have to be paying attention to nutrition and hydration so closely?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, life exists outside of training. So, it's my thing is, I want you to train well, but I also focus more on how do you feel the rest of the day. So, most of us have a life that, we have to work and function, whether it's with our family or, like I said, at work. So, I'm thinking beyond just training. Nutrition is everything, and hydration is the first part that I put in to any plan, because without hydration, you're not going to use any kind of perfect nutrition plan that you have in place. So, yeah, it's everything for endurance and life.
So on your website, right, it talks about all-inclusive and a comprehensive package. So when you're working with clients on a nutrition plan for endurance sports, you are taking lifestyle outside of training and racing into account as well then?
Absolutely. I mean, it's everything. It's about all about lifestyle, and not just their current lifestyle, but also their history. So what is their relationship with food? Do they have a history of eating restriction or eating disorder? um, we're looking at the entire athlete and not just what this one particular race or goal is. So yeah.
So, I mean, it's a sensitive topic, right? So, while we were in the green room, I talked to you a little bit about my disordered eating scenario. I've written an article on it. I was a binge eater for sure. I had fallen under the concept that lighter was faster, and so I restricted everything I ate. And then by the end of the night, I would find myself in the pantry inhaling donuts and whatever else I can get my hands on. What's it like for you as an RD with 15 years of experience to work with somebody who comes to you with a scenario like that? How do you break it down so that you can help them overcome that disordered eating component?
Yeah, one of the things I can either, so first of all, I feel like one of my superpowers is hearing things that people don't say. So, I know that endurance sports, by the nature of the sport, kind of gravitates people with a history of some sort of eating restriction or eating disorder. But somebody doesn't have to tell me that for me to pick up on it. So, I really focus on the language that I use, and if I pick up on it, whether they've volunteered that information or not, I'll be sure to readjust my language around maybe their history or things that they say. Um, it's a very delicate situation. So focusing on the relationship with food and then also just getting their blood sugar under control, whether that's how we pair our foods together throughout the day. Also, of course, just getting enough calories in general. That has a big impact on just our relationship in general and how our energy levels are, and helps avoid those restrictive binge cycles. So.
So I know, I mean, social media didn't get invented yesterday, but you've been doing this for 15 years, and the penetration of social media into our daily lives continues to grow. Have you seen with athletes that you're working with coming to you with, for lack of a better phrase, off the wall nutrition ideas because they saw that Tom in Tallahassee said that they should be eating, 4 grains of rice and only 4 grains of rice before they go out running?
You know, this is actually kind of interesting. So, the people I work with actually usually get their information from books and podcasts, which I'm thankful for. Now, we're on social media, they're on social media, they're hearing information, they're, reading information, um, but they're not necessarily using it for quality advice. At least the clients that I've worked with. So, I'm thankful to be on platforms like podcasts because this is where they're looking for information. They're coming to an expert or a credentialed professional for information rather than I'm going to go look for social media expert or social media advice. So that's been my experience for the most part.
What's a I guess myth that you have seen come across, athletes that are coming to work with you that you've had to debunk over time?
A myth. That's kind of a strong one because I think that there's truth to every statement out there. And there's context. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and says something about like low carb, well, we're endurance athletes, and low carb, first of all, is relative to each person. So, what's low carb for you may be high carb for me, probably not vice versa, just because I'm smaller. I'm assuming I'm smaller than you. Actually, I don't know what your body size is, but we're just going to assume. So, it's more of like taking whatever said myth is and talking to them about, well, maybe there's some part of that that's true, but that doesn't mean it's true for you
Okay.
or for me, right? So trying to break it down and not also like validating them, right? Not making them feel like, oh, I feel stupid or something like that.
Right.
I do think there's truth to every statement. It just may not be true for that particular circumstance or that particular individual. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy today, for lack of a better phrase, when we look around and there's just information that bombards us left, right,
Yeah.
and center with so much what could be false, right? Or hurtful, not necessarily false to your point. Like it might hurt me to think that I should only eat a certain way or drink an X number of ounces of liquid or something along those lines. That when I'm out there training could have a massive impact on me in the long run. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are a marathon runner, correct?
Yeah. I'm not that
So,
fast.
well, fast is all relative too, right?
That's
So,
relative.
um, so how, like when you're getting ready to go either into a marathon training cycle or even a race, if you want to touch on that, like what's it look like for you as an RD to start breaking down your nutritional needs, your liquid needs? Take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I definitely have a different mental space or a different thought process when I am intentionally training. So I train year round, right? But I'm not always training for an event. When I'm training for an event, I start dialing in and calculating. I know exactly how much I need to take and when. And the closer I get to race, the more just it's really just muscle memory. I can do it. Yeah, I have my, I look at my watch or whatever it is. But once race is over, if I don't have another event, or if it's not necessarily a race that, maybe I'm going to run it, but not race it, which is relative to each person too. Um, it takes me a few weeks to kind of step back out of that thought process and just kind of what I say be a normal athlete. So right now I'm moving back into marathon training season and I'm trying to get my headspace back into, I'm early on, but I'm already trying to think, okay, now I need to get more methodical about how I do things. So it's not to put rules around it, but it's definitely to put strategy. And I know that it works. So if I follow my plan and I have it all dialed in, yeah, it's just a different headspace whenever you're intentionally training for an event.
So if you're heading into training season, I presume you're going to be looking to race in the spring. So you'll be training over the fall and the winter. We're leaving summer, right? Fall just happened. Fall just turned, according to the calendar, not necessarily according to the weather.
Not here in
Um,
Texas.
it was warm here in LA as well today, so we had a false fall for a few days.
Yeah, we did
Walk
too.
us through, like, if you're an athlete and you're training through, well, most athletes are going to be training through a different season than running or racing, I should say. How do we supposed to adjust for the our needs as we get into the different climates? Because, for example, if I train through the summer for a fall race, right, temperatures are going to be cooler. I might sweat a little bit less. My needs might be a little bit different. Or training in cooler months and then racing in hotter months. Like how is an athlete supposed to adjust for that? And that is after they call you first, of course.
Right. So ideally, we are testing our sweat. The first thing, right? Sweat volume is what comes to mind. Ideally, we are testing our sweat volume. You don't have to do it every month, right? But we want to test it in different seasons, under different conditions. If you go on a vacation or whatever, if you go somewhere and you take a nice long run and you want to see how your sweat volume responds in that environment or that climate, especially if you're going to be racing there, in the future. So ideally, we're tracking our sweat volume, which or sweat rate. You can use it either way. And then, you can plug it into a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet calculator, and it basically graphs your response to certain conditions. Like, so you can predict your sweat rate under certain conditions. Now, on race day, let's say we have this really fancy sweat rate calculator and it says, oh, okay, under these conditions, I'm probably going to sweat this. There's always variables that we can't control. Okay, so there's no guarantee. But the idea is that you get a picture of what you typically lose under certain conditions. So that's the first thing that comes to mind as we're moving into a new season is we need to start once the actual weather changes. Especially, it's fall, which is really warm here, I'm going to be racing when it's really cold, I'm assuming. But in Texas, you never know. So I've done a January race where it's very hot, and I've done a January race in Texas where it's extremely cold. So you just never know. Um, but so anticipating, our sweat volume changes, also just the logistics of carrying whatever it is. So in the warmer months, you may wear different clothing. And so if we're going to be racing in something else because it's going to be cooling off, whatever the change in weather may be, it may change how you carry or wear fluid. How do we carry or wear our fuel? All of those logistics. And then if we're going to get a new belt or a vest or whatever it may be, how are we going to get the bottles out or the fluid out or the gels out, whatever it is? So there's just lots of logistics that you kind of have to work through and think through. And let's use the same, strategy every season. So
Do you sparked a question in my head as you were answering the last question. When you're working with athletes, are you providing them with a nutrition hydration strategy plan as well for the specific race, not just walking through the training?
oh
And
yeah.
then you are okay.
Yes, definitely.
And then at that point, like, do you review it with them like a week before? Or like, is there a time frame in which you like, hey, I'd like to schedule a conversation so that I can go over the hydration nutrition plan with you, and we can look at the weather, the forecast, and what's that process like?
So it depends on the client. So, people who are working with me, like through coaching, yes, we're going to have access to kind of doing that last minute touch point before the race. Um, Not everybody does that because of a variety of reasons, right? Life, budget, whatever it may be. But to kind of go back and touch on, so yes, I tackle and handle daily nutrition. That really should be your foundation of any kind of race nutrition plan. But then also I do all of the race nutrition. So this is going to be everything from dialing in your fueling to your electrolytes, your hydration, which is your fluid volume, right? That may be a sports drink, water, rehydrate, electrolyte, um, um, drink, something. It depends on each athlete. Um, so yeah, we're dialing all of that in.
Do you have an area of endurance sports that you work with predominantly? So are you working predominantly with runners? Are you working with triathletes, cyclists? Yes, all of the above.
All of the above. I'm going to say, mm, if I had to pick a lane, it's going to be more of runners and triathletes. But then I definitely have all kinds of different athletes. I have, people who, um, go and do several thousand-mile bike rides to through hike Appalachian trails. Like I have all kinds of different athletes, and then other um, regular athletes too. Non-endurance sports.
Talk to me about the through hikers because through hikers are not moving at the pace that a marathon runner might. And so how do you take into account the energy expenditure, right? Because they might be doing some climbing up and over mountain ranges and things like that. Like how does that play into when you're plotting all of this out? This is fascinating because it's different than getting on the road and running for 26.2 miles.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a different ball game, right? So, number one, you don't have accessibility to normal fueling. So when you go through, and so you can have drop points where you can have people mail in fuel, which is great. When you have access to stores, they're not going to be like Walmart or whatever store, you may have there. They're going to be some sort of, what would be the word, not even a gas station, right? So we're going to have
Right.
very limited options. um so you really have to have somebody who's willing to put in the work, right? We're going to have to eat some have calorie dense snacks on board, because there's only so much we can carry, and we don't always know how long we're going to go between having another load of food, or access to restock. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I would imagine that, not knowing would create stress. on the athlete. Like, I don't know where this next gas station might be or when I might get there, even if they've plotted it out on a map to kind of gauge some idea. They might be moving slower than they anticipated. And so then when they're finally at the place where they can pick up food, what do I need to pack now? Because I don't know, the number of hours between the next one might be longer or shorter than anticipated too. So I got to imagine, like, playing that puzzle piece has got to be really difficult and stressful for those athletes.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I think that you have, two trains of thoughts. You would think that they would be super dialed in and ready for all of the nutrition advice and intervention, but then you have a lot of people who don't recognize the value, and I guess they just go and do. And that just I just can't even wrap my head around. Like, I would never I cannot imagine doing that.
You got to be careful, right? If you're just going and doing, right, there's only but so much space in the pack. So, like, if you're hungry, and what do they say? Like, don't go shopping on an empty stomach, right? Because you end up buying
Right.
things that you don't need or want. So if you're doing that as a through hiker, like, you
Yeah.
might end up with a whole lot of stuff that you don't need or want in that
Right.
scenario.
Sure.
Do
Which is why
you?
most of them don't make it, right? Or could be part of it. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, but nutrition is such a key role in success in these sports. Again, I mentioned my disordered eating and how I was restricting myself and then binge eating. And oftentimes I wonder, right, could I have been a more effective and efficient athlete if I wasn't battling that disordered eating years ago? And what results may have come from that. And I think that we often forget as athletes that we are human beings, right? There's no Jason, the employee or owner of a business, and then Jason, an athlete, and then Jason, the friend or family member. Like, that's all the same person. And so all of those things are involved, and we oftentimes forget about nutrition, or we get hyper focused on nutrition,
Yes.
which then ends up causing us to restrict
Mhm.
certain things, even though we know that we're hungry, right? Like, hey, this hamburger looks great at this restaurant, but I'm so hyper focused on only eating X. And so I can't eat the hamburger even though I'm starving, um, which can be a problem too. Like, help me understand this, because I find nutrition to be so fascinating, and I'm no expert in it, and will always divert people to experts in the field like yourself. Like, what got you interested in becoming a registered dietitian, and then specifically with working with athletes?
Yeah, so there's a lot I could say on all of that, but I didn't realize why I got into nutrition. But as a little girl, I did the 4-H food show. So, I'd present a recipe and talk about what the nutrients did for your body. So that's really where that came from. I was also very insecure as a little girl, with my body and with my weight at the time, which drove me to be physically active in college. So I was never, that typical avatar when you say, oh, the athlete, right? In fact, I ran for 10 years before I even called myself a runner. People would call me a runner. I'm like, I'm not a runner, I just run. Which I think is an interesting psychology. But yeah, so now I've been running for, I don't know, over 20 years. Um, so I kind of lost my train of thought there. Can you restate your
what
question there?
what got you interested in
Oh,
becoming an
yes.
RD, and then specifically with athletes?
So, okay, so I went into college. I was a biomedical science major and had a elective in nutrition, and I just fell in love with it. So, thankfully, it was an easy transition, and that's when I discovered what a dietitian was. I'd never heard about it, and went through my internship. And never heard of sports nutrition, of a sports dietitian. Um, and ended up working for a sports dietitian when I came out of my internship, soon after my internship, who was in endurance sports. I was still running and I had no idea as a dietitian at that point about sports nutrition and how to fuel for endurance races. And so it wasn't until many years later that I started my own business. But anyway, that's where the seed got planted. So yeah.
Fascinating. So when did you start Victorem Nutrition?
2022 is when I officially like formed my entity. I guess it was because in COVID is when I, started working, but I hadn't formed the entity. So I guess it was 2022 when I officially formed my business. But I'd been practicing in private practice since 2020, late 2019, somewhere around
Can
there.
Can you recall any particular catalyst that made you say to yourself, Jenna, you should go out on your own and start this business?
It's interesting because you kind of have these seeds, right? These thoughts in your mind, and you're like, no, 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 like that's not me, not now. And then all of a sudden, like one day, you kind of wake up and it's like it's time
Yeah.
right now. And I kind of had this realization where it's like, well, you know, you don't have to have all the answers. You would never do anything if you had all the answers. Um, so I'm okay with uncertainty and not having everything figured out. I also knew I wasn't getting any younger, and so I don't know, just thought it's time. So
You
just
are a mom,
ran with it.
correct?
I am, yeah. I
You're a
have
mom.
four.
So you're a mom, you're a marathoner, you are a business owner, and you're an RD. How do you balance all of these things?
So jokingly, I say not well. No, it's hard. It's really hard. When I speak to other business owners and other moms, and moms of multiple children, so like I said, we have four. It's a lot, and it's a struggle. But I always tell people, you give so much to your kids, but you don't have to give them everything. You don't have to lose yourself, and it's okay to do something that you enjoy. So I'm extremely passionate about what I do, and I love talking about nutrition and hydration, and whether it's related to race or just whatever. um, and then I love running, and I don't think that I have to give up everything. You give up a lot, and that's part of it, but you don't have to give up everything.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I try to do the best I can, especially over on LinkedIn, is dispel this belief that entrepreneurialism is glamorous. Um,
Yes.
it's it's not easy, right? You're always on. Even when you're not technically in front of your laptop or here hosting a show, um,
Mhm.
you're promoting your business on this show as well. Like you're always thinking about something, right? It might be an invoice that has to get paid. It might be an invoice that needs to be submitted. It might be, a client that you didn't get back to. And so you're always thinking about the business. Add in training. When am I going to fit training in? Okay, I've got a client meeting at this time. I can squeeze in a run after that. And then kids. I have four kids, mouths to feed and off to school and homework and extracurricular activities, and it's not easy. And so kudos to you for, you know, taking the risk and betting on yourself to start a business, in the midst of all of these things. Like you should be proud of yourself and applauded, because it's not easy to go and do what you're doing, especially in an area, and you can correct me if I'm wrong since you've been doing this for a long time, where people aren't always receptive to advice when it comes to nutrition.
Right. They are not.
So, how do you convince somebody, as put on your entrepreneurial
Mhm.
mind and brain and marketing? Like, how do you convince people to consider it? Maybe they're not ready to commit, but to consider, I need help with nutrition if I want to have success/fun at this endurance sport.
Well, I think obviously if you can find, and not to be, oh so marketer, right? But I mean, figure
Be the
out what they're
marketer.
struggling. Then be the marketer. Find out what they're struggling with. So to your point about being a mom and being a business owner and being a marathon runner, recovery is essential. So, what that looks like for me is I have to, I train early in the morning. I always have, and thankfully that served me well, like prior to kids, right? So, I train early in the morning. I don't have time to lay in bed all day after I've done my 15 miles or whatever it may be. So, recovery is first and foremost. Um, So, when I'm working with people who maybe don't completely recognize the value, if I listen to things that they say or don't say, and I can pick up on what they're struggling with, or if I notice something, but recovery, or if they say something about hydration, or they're tired, or they're falling asleep, um, injury. It's a big one. We all think that injury just comes with the territory. Um, that shouldn't be normalized. Females, losing menstrual cycle, that should not be normalized. That's not normal. That's related to your nutrition. So yeah, just picking up on their missing, their pain points and what they're missing.
I can't stress recovery enough. I've been doing these things for 17 years. I've swam, cycled, ran, hiked, walked for 17 years for who knows how many thousands upon thousands of miles, zero injuries. Um, Recovery is beyond important. I've learned my lesson when it comes to nutrition and how important that is, and fueling my body properly. And, it's the cliche, right? You can't drive a car on an empty gas tank. And I wonder why, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, why we could hear that cliche repeated until our ears bleed, and yet somehow some of us still don't catch on to it. Do you think it's because, well, I just know better? Or what are your thoughts behind why people just don't pay attention to that cliche?
Yeah, I do think that's interesting. And I think about, like, put it into a different context of like our animals. Like, oh my gosh, we would feed our animals. You would never just not, if you have pets, right? I'm thinking we have
Awesome.
we have cats and dogs and just have animals for a fair. Okay, so like you wouldn't just not feed your animal. It doesn't make sense. Why would, or your child? I'm just not going to feed my child. I don't. But then we won't feed ourselves.
You bring
So
you bring up a great point. Like, I coach athletes, 100-mile athletes, and sometimes I get, questions unsolicited about what should I eat and all of these things. And I'm like, think about what you would do if you weren't moving for 26 to 32 hours. You would be eating, right? You would go and you'd have breakfast, lunch, dinner, you'd have a snack. Like, why you would think to not be eating while you were exerting energy for 26, 28, 32 hours is mind boggling to me sometimes. And the eyeballs open, right? Like, oh, that makes sense. I should be putting calories in. And again, I'm baffled by this idea that somehow, some way, we're going to get through an event without consuming calories. Like, I don't know how that math works. Did we skip that class somewhere?
I think that, a lot of people start the sport to lose weight, first of all. And then if that changes, right? So say you started running to lose weight, and then your goal changed. Like, we lost the weight and now we're still racing. Well, now we've developed this habit, right? This behavior, and just really haven't put any thought around it. I think that's one reason. I think that a lot of endurance athletes tend to do have a restrictive mindset for whatever reason. Um, yeah, so I think it's just complicated. Humans are complicated.
That's very true. And I think that's another thing that we need to consider, right? That when we see a post on social media or elsewhere, we're having a conversation, that might apply to that particular person, but it may not apply to me. And I think that's one of the reasons why we here at Run Try Bike immediately point to experts in the field of nutrition like yourself and Stevie Lynn Smith and others that we have had on our show for advice, because we are not in a position, we are not educated in the field of nutrition to give advice specific, right? Like, I can tell somebody, you're going to be moving for 26 hours, you probably need to eat, right? That's about the extent of what I'm going to get into. And then honestly, what might work for me may not work for you. And I often tell this story. When I raced Rocky Raccoon one year, which is a 100-mile race in Huntsville, Texas, it's always humid there. It is always, always, always humid there. And I couldn't really keep anything down right from the beginning of the race. And what I wound up eating, no lie, was 50 Oreos. There are 25 aid stations along the course, and I had 2 Oreos per aid station, plus whatever liquid calories I could take in, but I couldn't eat solid food. Imagine me telling somebody, yeah, I fueled with 50 Oreos, and then they go and try to put that into practice. Like, how successful are you going to possibly be, right?
Yeah, no, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and everybody is different, and the perfect plan for you could be the worst plan for the person next to you. I just, I don't know. I think, of course, it seems crazy to me that you just wouldn't have a fueling plan. But the next craziest thing I think is just taking your training partner's fueling plan. Like, that's not good either, especially if you're just going to start it on race day.
Yes, that's a great point. So when you're working with athletes, how often do you find yourself like having to emphasize, train with what you're going to be racing with? In other words, if you're going to be drinking Scratch or Tailwind or whatever else, or if you're going to be eating Spring Energy or Cliff, Goose, or whatever it might be, like how often are you finding that you're having to emphasize that to people, as well as this idea of testing? Right? Okay, the goo worked this time, maybe next time try a different product so you could find out what actually works best for you.
Yeah, it's 100% individualized, and practicing it is essential. They ask when. I'm like, okay, well, at minimum, I'm going to say 4 to 6 weeks. But honestly, if you know what you're training for, like the event that you're training, it's not like a last minute thing. If you know the event that you're training for, and know what you want to fuel with, we're going to practice that on certain sessions. So I'll even look through their training plan and say, okay, on this day, this is what we're going to do. On this day, we're going to do a 2 hour pre race breakfast. On this day, we're going to do a 1 hour or a 30-minute. So it just depends. And, also on the nature of how I'm working with that particular client. So some people, sign up for a one-off consultation. That's fine too. I totally understand that not everybody can do the coaching. But coaching is where I can go in and look at the different workouts and the nature of the workouts and say, okay, this is our ultimate race plan, this is how we modify for this particular session type thing. So
Give our audience what a consultation might look like. How long is it? What are you going over? You don't have to get into super detail, but so they have an idea of what that looks like. And then I will also ask you, like, what does coaching then look like?
yeah, so depending on what they're signing up for, so when I'm doing custom meal planning, that is a 90-minute session, which sounds like eternal, I feel like. 90 minutes goes very fast, and I always tell them beforehand, hey, you're not hostage for 90 minutes. If we get done before them, that's totally fine. But everybody ends up having questions, so I allot 90 minutes for that session. All of my forms are sent beforehand just because I don't want to spend our hour or hour and a half collecting information and not working on you know, actionable things. So my forms are sent over electronically beforehand, and most of my other consultations are 1 hour long. We'll do some 30-minute check-ins, but for the most part, I usually do hour consultations with communication in between as needed. Now, coaching is just 100% hands on deck, right? So, we're going to have our custom meal plan because we need to know what our daily nutrition needs to look like. We have our race nutrition plan. We have our carb loading plan, if that makes sense for you, hydration planning. Um, Ongoing communication between sessions, and then looking at the individual workouts and saying, okay, this is how we um which race breakfast we're going to, or I call it race breakfast. I do like a 1, 2, and 3 hour version. And so typically on race day we're going to follow that 3 hour, but we're not typically going to follow a 3 hour race breakfast timeline for just a weekend long session type thing. So, helping them navigate when to employ which strategy and how much. So, yeah.
Awesome. We're running up on time here. So before we jump into our own rapid fire food questions, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you for either a consulting session or bring you on as a coach, nutrition coach?
Yeah, so probably Instagram, Victorem Nutrition, at Victorem Nutrition, my website, you can also book online. So that's Victorem, and that's victorem.com. But yeah, website or social media, Instagram.
Fantastic. And I know on your website you also have a newsletter. So scroll to the bottom of Jena's website, input your information, and get her newsletter so you can start to get to know her a little bit better beyond this podcast and what you see on social media and the website. Jena, thank you so much for joining me. We get to go into the fun, super fun side of food here with our rapid fire food questions. Now, you've answered the very first question accurately, I might say, in getting the pineapple on pizza as a nay correct. So let's see if we can keep the ball rolling. Oreos. Do you like the original Oreos or the OG Oreo or double stuff Oreos better?
So actually, my favorite, they don't sell anymore. They were called Most Stuff, STUF.
Yeah, the Oreo inside the Oreo.
Those were my favorite. A friend of mine gave me a package of those for my birthday, and I said, that is a mean joke. So if I had to pick one, then it's going to be the double stuff, but really I like the most stuff. So
All right. So Jason
I do
Fitzgerald,
love Oreos.
Jason Fitzgerald gave us a way to eat Oreos that I had never heard of before. And so I'd like to hear how you eat Oreos, and then I'll share his the way he does it. So how do you eat Oreos? Are you a twist and scrape? Are you a eat it all at one time? Are you a dunker?
No, not dunked. No, I do not like it soggy. Um, so I prefer to take, 'cause I don't like wasting food. So I take the top layer off and I eat that. I don't really like the one crispy. And then I like to have just the stuffing and the bottom layer. You can tell I like Oreos.
So I love food, period. And I just love the way different people eat foods differently. It's phenomenal. So Jason Fitzgerald's way for eating Oreos, he is a dunker, so he doesn't mind them soggy. But get this, the soggiest way you could possibly ever eat an Oreo, he throws one into the glass of milk and lets it just sit there until he's done eating his Oreos. And then when he drinks it, he's like, you get this last rush of Oreo um, before it's all said and done. And like, I was blown away by it because I never would have thought of that because I pop Oreos like aspirin. Like, I'm not twisting, I'm not dunking, I'm just throwing the
Right.
whole thing in and chewing it. So I was blown away by that. But I just love the way people eat. And it's just the whole idea of food to me is awesome.
Yes, yes.
Licorice. Are you a fan of licorice?
No,
See,
no licorice.
we're on a roll here. We're 3 for 3 so far. Peeps. Are Peeps a real candy or are they just terrible marshmallows covered in gold glitter?
Terrible marshmallows covered in gold glitter. But
Yes.
chocolate covered marshmallows are good.
What is?
Chocolate covered marshmallows, but not
Oh,
peeps.
yeah. Like, sure. Like, if you also want to put it on a s'mores, I got it. Like, I'm down with marshmallows that way, but Peeps are terrible.
Yeah, no, no peeps.
Do you enjoy roasting marshmallows?
Uh, they're okay. They have to be burnt.
Yes, like charcoal, right? Yes. Like totally burnt. Like I want to use it like a torch because it's on fire.
Yes.
It's the best because then when you peel that crusty edge off, you got all that ooey gooey still on the stick.
Yeah.
Yes, my friend. Candy corn. Is candy corn a real candy or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
Okay. So
When everybody says okay, they're going
no,
with candy corn as a real candy.
no, I don't like food dye. But the problem is I like candy corns. And I bought the dye-free candy corns and they don't taste the same.
So does it have colors on it or is it just like a white?
They're colors, but they're just like real mild, real light. The
Okay.
flavor's just not the same. And the food dye doesn't give any flavor. I just don't like food dye. So it's not about like foods that I exclude, but there are ingredients that I don't like, and food dye is one
Oh,
of them.
absolutely.
But I do like candy corns.
That's hilarious. Candy corn is out.
I haven't eaten them in years though, because I don't like the food dye.
See, this is why these conversations are fantastic. Creamy or crunchy peanut butter or nut butter if you have allergies?
Crunchy.
Crunchy peanut butter. How do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Do you put the crunchy peanut butter on one slice of bread and jelly on the other and smash them together? Or do you put peanut butter on one slice, jelly on that same side, and then put the other slice over the top?
No, peanut butter on one slice, jelly on the other, slap them together, and then you have to eat the crust first because that's my least favorite part, and then the middle of it last.
This, the question I was going to ask is, how do you do it? Do you cut it into rectangles, 2 triangles, 4 triangles, or 4 squares? But you're literally taking it and just eating it and turning it as you eat the crust?
Uh-huh, because I
I
don't like
love
that
it.
part, and I don't want to waste food.
So this is why these are awesome. So a couple of years ago, we had Shannon Mick on. She's on Twitter under B Run Short Ultra, and I asked her that question. And what she does is she cuts it into 2 rectangles, but then turns it like corn on the cob and eats the middle out, and just uses the crust as like a handle so she doesn't get her hands dirty. I could
Right.
not believe it, and this is an even better answer now. How do your kids eat it? Do your kids follow in your footsteps
No, they cut the crust off.
and just
All of
throw it
them.
out?
The 16-year-old's gotten better. She'll just cut the top off. Yeah.
And then eat down?
And just eat. Yeah, they'll eat it. And so one of them will like cut the top off and then basically gnaw around the edge and like eat the middle of it and then throw the rest of it away. And the other ones will just cut the edges off, but when you do that, everything squishes out.
Right, yes.
So that's not good, but a couple of them eat it like that. And then my oldest, she'll eat all of it except the top crust.
This is fantastic. The best ways to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We might have to have a round table on this at some point. Red velvet cake. Is red velvet cake a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
It's just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom.
Yes. By the way, for all you red velvet fans, I got it. It tastes different. It uses some sort of alkali cocoa, blah, 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 blah. Don't send hate mail. It's just a joke. It's
I
okay.
think the icing's different though than a chocolate cake. I
Yeah.
think it's yeah.
Yeah, it has like an acidic flavor to it than the icing you would get on a chocolate cake for sure.
Yeah.
But whenever people tell me that, I'm like, well, then why not just eat carrot cake? Like carrot
Ooh,
cakes.
carrot cake's good.
See? Yes. Exactly.
I make a good carrot cake.
You were like the friend I never had. Like we would be hanging out at restaurants, eating everything together, having a blast. We were on the same page. Favorite ice cream?
Well, okay, so I live in Brenham, and that's where I don't know if you've heard of Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where Bluebell is from. And if you go to the parlor, they have coconut ice cream. I love their, and you can't buy it at the store. You can only get it at their parlor. So coconut is one of my favorite, and then marble slab sweet cream. I don't even know if they still have that.
I haven't been to a creamery in a long time. Does the coconut have like little bits of coconut in it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, I love coconut.
There's I'm Puerto Rican, and there's a candy in Puerto Rico, dulce de coco, and it looks like a stick of chalk, right? And it actually, like if you crumble it, it would crumble like a stick of chalk too, but it tastes so good because it's, coconut. It's like a coconut candy, and it's so phenomenal.
So what about almond joy?
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, but not mounds. I like the almonds in there.
Yeah, you got to have the almonds in there for sure. Like I'm not throwing the mounds in the garbage, but if I had a choice, I'm going almond joy first, without a doubt.
Yeah. Even though I'd rather go with dark chocolate, but for some reason I like the almond joy better than the mounds.
It's the texture. Gives you a little bit of something different.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it does. Yeah.
So speaking of candy, my next question was going to be your favorite candy bar.
Almond joy.
Almond joy, hands down. There's no other candy bar better.
No. It used to be Butterfinger, but now it's Almond Joy.
Oh, Butterfinger's a good one too. So,
unless I went with like a hearty chocolate. I know I made a comment. I love my flavor bars. But if like I'm going to go for a candy bar, it's going to be Almond Joy. So
So Larry Young, Loehr Young, he's a endurance athlete in Georgia, and 2 or 3 weeks ago, he would post mid-ride pictures of a payday bar or something else. And so I've started posting pictures. And so now we are on a path to see what different candy bar we can pick up mid-ride at, every different time we go riding. And so far we've had payday, Kit Kat, Twix, Zero. And what was the last one he had? I think he had a Snickers on the last one. So we've gotten 5 down. So we're making our way through the candy bar aisle at the gas station mid ride through.
I used to use fun size Snicker bars for my races. I did that for a couple of races. Yeah. I tried Butterfingers. They were too chewy, too crunchy. I couldn't do that.
Too crunchy. I tell people all the time, like the mini Snickers bar, like on Halloween, keep it to yourself. Like, don't hand that out. Go get the real bar. But they're great for when you're racing, for me, 50, 100 milers. You leave them in your vest, and then you put them in your mouth, and you don't actually chew them. You just allow the chocolate to melt, and it gives you like this soothing feeling. And it's calories, obviously. What's that?
Slow release.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, mini Snickers when you're out running is fantastic.
Unless it's in Texas.
And then you're just getting a glob of liquid at that point. It is fall, again, by calendar rules. And Starbucks has their PSL out and has had it out for weeks. Are you more of a pumpkin spice person or more of an apple cider person?
Oh, pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice drinks, pumpkin spice foods, everything, straight up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like pumpkin spice. I'm not a big fan of apple cider. I don't know. Just not my preference.
This is our first divergence on the food questions. You can eat one type of food for the rest of your life. Are you going sweet or savory?
Savory.
Nice. What would be the meal that you would eat if you were getting ready to blast off into outer space with Matt Damon and only going to eat sweet potatoes for the rest of your life?
I have no idea why this popped in my head, but for some reason, shrimp enchiladas. I don't know. There's lots of foods I like, but that one came to mind.
Is there a local place near you that serves like the best shrimp enchiladas you've ever had?
I make them.
There you go. There's the answer.
I don't know.
Chocolate chip cookie or oatmeal raisin cookie?
Chocolate chip with nuts.
Whoa, a little spin on it. What type of nuts?
Pecans or walnuts.
Are you a fan of pecan pie?
Yeah.
What's your favorite pie?
Dutch apple.
Ooh, very good call. Pop-Tarts, frosted or unfrosted?
Not frosted.
Not frosted. So unfrosted?
Unfrosted. Yeah.
So you're the person that they keep making this product for? The one person that's out there buying the unfrosted ones?
Yeah, they don't make the ones that I like. It's the brown sugar cinnamon ones without frosting. They only make them with frosting. Right. They don't sell them without frosting anymore. They don't sell them unfrosted anymore.
Pop-Tarts, get on it. Don't miss out on Jena's order, okay? All right, last question for you, and thank you so much for being a willing participant in this ridiculous series of questions regarding food. Tray of brownies is coming out of the oven. Are you the type of person that goes to the edge so that you can get a little bit of crust with some ooey gooey in the middle? Or are you going to the center of the tray and grabbing all the ooey gooey pieces you can?
The center.
Straight up center, not even worried about it. Now, you putting nuts in your chocolate chip cookies. Are you putting nuts in your brownies?
Yes.
I
always put crunchy.
There you go. There's the texture. Are you putting ice cream on top of the brownie to make it a la mode?
Yes. Vanilla's good, but I think it's the caramel ice cream. Is that dulce de leche, maybe? I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
Caramel ice cream.
Really caramel is a really good flavor for putting on top of brownies, but my favorite is coffee. If you put the brownie in a mug and then put the scoop of coffee on top of it, it's like having a mocha, and obviously the ice cream will melt, and so by the end you have like a brownie affogato when it's all said and done, and just
Can't be beat.
I might have to try that. Yeah. Wait, what kind of ice cream? Coffee ice cream?
Yeah, coffee ice cream.
Yeah.
I mean, I look, just like any candy bar, I'm not throwing it away, but I love all kinds of ice cream, but coffee's going to be up at the top of that list for sure. Jena, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your expertise and insight into the world of nutrition and endurance sports, and for being a willing participant in our rapid fire food questions. For those of you that are joining us, this show will be wherever you get your podcasts on Wednesday, October 2nd. And by Friday of this week, which should be September 26th, 27th, it will be on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review so that you don't miss out on any of our shows and great guests like Jena. Jena, thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we'll see you around.
Bye.